Welcome to Terror at Collinwood. It's Penny Dreadful, and I am very much looking forward to discussing the many characters of Nancy Barrett with my guests, Joe Flanagan and Beth Castor. But before we get to the show, I want to apologize in advance because the audio in this episode is absolutely horrible. I did my best to fix it. I think I figured out what was going on. There was some feedback coming from a couple of the devices, unfortunately. So I did my best to do sound correction on that and to trim out some of the echo and feedback and spikes in the audio. I did my best. If you think it sounds bad now, believe me, it was much worse before. So I do apologize in advance for that. But the guests in this episode are wonderful. The subject of this episode is wonderful, and lots of great conversation about the characters played by the illustrious and talented Nancy Barrett. Now, during this episode, I also mentioned the Literary License podcast, and I want to offer my condolences because Keith Chago, the host of that podcast, passed away in March. As I found out recently, I was really sad to hear that. Keith was a really nice guy. I was on their podcast once for a visit, and occasionally I would hear from Keith. So my deepest sympathies to Keith's family and friends and everybody in the Literary License podcast, Tom and Vicky and everyone else. I was very sorry to hear about that.
My friend, where you tread, for I warn you now, there are spoilers ahead.
Welcome to the strange and mysterious world of terror at Collinwood. 'Tis I, Penny Dreadful, and I am thrilled, I am ecstatic to be joined today by two friends of mine. You've heard both Beth Castor and Joe Flanagan in past episodes of Terror at Collinwood. They're longtime Dark Shadows fans, regular attendees of Dark Shadows festivals and events and Seaview Terrace fan parties, and they're contributors to the Dark Shadows fandom. Joe, in fact, runs the Many Faces of Nancy Barrett Facebook page, which boasts over 6,000 followers, and which you'll find a link to in the show notes. And if you're on Facebook, you've got to join the group because Nancy Barrett is the topic of our discussion today. Her characters on Dark Shadows. We're here to celebrate her work on the show because she certainly deserves it. She is a brilliant actress, and I'm excited to be joined by my two friends today. How are you?
Fine.
We're both doing great. It's always great to see Beth and to see you as well.
It's great to see you both. We were just talking a little bit about our Lyndhurst adventure a few weeks ago, and I did see Joe there. I didn't run across Beth there. We were in the same areas there, but we didn't cross paths. But did you both have a nice time?
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I had a really, really good time. I really, really did.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I would have liked to have seen some of the people that I hadn't seen, but, those things happen. So
yeah, it's unfortunate. Of course, Nancy and David both had to cancel, but hopefully for the 60th anniversary, which they did, and now Catherine Lee Scott announced will be in Los Angeles next year. They will be having an event out there. They didn't announce the date yet, but fingers crossed that some of the folks who were missing, who we were hoping to see, will make it out to the 60th anniversary Dark Shadows event, because that's quite a milestone, 60th anniversary, and it would be amazing to have everybody there. I would love to see the whole gang together. And
yeah, really, really nice.
Yeah, maybe they'll do an East Coast event too. I'm not sure if they're going to do two of them, but from what I understand, they're definitely doing one on the West Coast. Fingers crossed that that all goes as planned for that. But this Many Faces of Nancy Barrett Facebook group, Joe, that you've started. Can you talk a little, just before we dive into a little bit with your history with Dark Shadows and then Nancy Barrett's characters in the show? Can you talk a little bit about your Facebook group, so that Facebook page, so for people who are interested in joining?
Yeah, well, I had belonged to a number of generic Dark Shadows pages. And when I created the one for Nancy, I wanted to make sure that it would only focus mostly on Nancy. So therefore, I created a public page, but as an artist page. So it only allows me to post stuff to the page, directly to the page. Some people do contribute and it goes to a separate page. And then if I feel that it's, pertinent, I will then transfer it to the front page. But that kept it from, going into generic Dark Shadows information, posting pictures of other actors. I wanted it to just focus on her. The one thing, though, I have 6,000 followers, but I probably have 12,000 to 15,000 lurkers that haven't joined for some reason. I don't know why they've made a decision to not follow the page, but they've all been invited, and I would like to see if those people could then join the page, because it would be helpful to get the page more focus from other people. But I created it back on September 5th, 2011. So
Okay.
14 years. But it took a while for the numbers to increase. And I have to thank Gene Caruso from Dark Shadows Lives,
Sure.
because he promoted it, and it went from like 400 to like 1,600 in like a week.
Oh, fantastic.
And then since then, I've learned to invite people and do other things and present more content. But I have to be honest with you. After last July, I sort of lost a little bit of interest for a while, and then I had some medical problems. So it wasn't until recently that I started posting again.
I see.
But that will, there have been like 8 or 9 recent posts that have been on there.
Great.
So.
And as I mentioned at the top of the show, there's going to be a link in the show notes for the audio version, and for YouTube, if you just look in the notes underneath the video, I will have a link there as well. So if you have a Facebook account, you can just click right on through and just join the group. It's completely free, and it's really cool because Joe posts great pictures and info about Nancy. And Beth, I want to ask you too. One thing, this is the topic of this show, this episode is not costumes per se, but I do want to touch on some of the costumes Nancy wears during the show as we go along, because your costumes for the Seaview parties that I have seen you wear are sensational. You are just brilliant with your costumes. I remember the Mary Poppins costume you did. I was just blown away by have you always been into like cosplay or costumes, or has that always been a talent that you've had?
I've always loved costumes. Even when I was a little, like maybe 6 years old, my father used to dress me up in different things and put makeup on me, and I guess I started there. I don't know, but I just have always loved it.
Yeah.
And I almost decided to go into theater and study costuming, but I didn't go that direction, unfortunately.
You're so good at it. Were the costumes from Dark Shadows an influence on you or inspiration at all?
Yeah, probably, yeah, because I will always watch the show. I've watched entire movies just to see costumes, so yeah, I'm sure they were, at that age especially.
Yeah. Now let's talk a little bit about that. I want to hear from both of you, and before we talk about Nancy's characters on the show, what was your introduction to Dark Shadows? When did you discover it, and how did you become fans of the show? And since Beth, you just mentioned, at that age watching it, how did you get into it? What year?
Well, I think mine was about 1967 when Barnabas came on.
Okay.
So later on, I had to go back and watch the others when they were available. But yeah, I was in like 6th grade, I think, And my sister would come home from school, and she got home just a little before I did. So she actually told me about it. She said, "Oh, you've got to watch the show. It's just, I know it's something you'll like. This old house, and they're by the sea, and there's a vampire." And she told me all this stuff, and I said, "Well, yeah, I'm there." So that was pretty much it. After that, I was hooked.
Fantastic. And I know you became involved in the fandom as well, because I knew, when I started going to the CV parties, I've been, part of the fandom since 1986. So I was subscribing to the fanzine and stuff, although I wasn't really attending event. I went to 2 festivals, but I remember seeing your name. So you were involved in the Dark Shadows fandom.
I was on a back before Facebook. There was a bulletin board.
Maybe that's where I saw your name. Yeah.
That's probably where you saw me, because I did write a lot on that, and that's where I met Amanda.
Oh, Amanda Desiree. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Desiree, and that's where I met her, and basically, and we went back and forth. That's how I found out about CVU. I didn't know you could even go there.
Okay.
I figured I'd go once, and that would be it.
Yeah.
I'll go back every chance I got.
Yeah, because the online fandom that came around in the going into the late 90s, early 2000s, of the Dark Shadows forums and the news groups. I remember alt TV, alt fan TV, Dark Shadows, and things like that. So yeah, there were all kinds of things like that. How about you, Joe? I know we talked a little bit about this in one of the previous episodes where I was at CView talking to everyone, but how about a little bit about your background with Dark Shadows?
Well, I used to run home from school like everybody else, but unlike the gentleman who was on your previous podcast, my school was 9 blocks away.
Okay.
So I really had to run. And there was a cemetery in between that I could cut across.
Oh, perfect.
I ran to the cemetery to get home to watch the episodes. But when I first discovered Dark Shadows, it was pre-Barnabas. And I have to be honest, I was not impressed. So
you started watching pre-Barnabas. Interesting.
Well, I only saw 1 episode, and it was boring to me. I was 6 years old at the time. Or no, I was 7 years old at the time, in 1966. So I completely forgot about it. But my parents used to watch a lot of stuff on ABC, on TV. So when I would come home, because they turned it off, I would walk home and turn the TV on. And that's when I saw a man rising out of a coffin. And that hooked me in 1967. And from then on, the neighborhood kids used to watch it. As the episodes went further, I used to write little scripts, and we used to go to the cemetery and perform them.
I love it.
It was really, really cool. And then I got involved in fandom. I knew about I started watching on the New Jersey Network, and I heard about the Manhattan Shadows first, which was between ShadowCon and the festivals. And then I went to the first festival in 1983, and I've been to probably over 20 festivals or events since then, because I used to go East Coast and West Coast. And I also was involved with the Eagle Hill Sentinel, which was a short.
Jeff Hamill.
Yeah, and myself, we were co-editors.
Yeah.
And I also wrote for that as well. So I've been involved a lot. And when I went to the first festival, I thought, like everybody else, I thought I was the only one that remembered the show. And back then in 1983, there was no internet. The episodes hadn't been shown again, except for, up to 1795. So it was mostly memories. And, we would stay up all night because we were young. And we would sit in the lobby of the hotel and be talking until like 6 o'clock in the morning, and then go right to breakfast. So it was really, really cool. And I've made so many great friendships. And the people that we've met in the show, we are so spoiled compared to the rest of Hollywood and TV. We really, really are. And they've become friends and family, really, to me. And I'm sure to everybody else as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of, pop culture shows, I guess, franchises that develop these types of followings. There doesn't seem to be that level of camaraderie in a lot of those cases as compared to Dark Shadows fandom. The actors are very, accessible and friendly, and you talk to them and hang out with them and have some laughs and a good time at these get-togethers. It's really great, and they're all very nice, warm, friendly people, and so are the fans. Everybody's always very welcoming, and it's just such a great environment to be in. But I'm glad you mentioned the Eagle Hill Sentinel. That was one of the fanzines I loved back then. It was a really good fanzine, very packed with a lot of information and detail. And I do miss those days with the fanzines that you'd get in the mail.
Unfortunately, and I'm not complaining, but unfortunately, it became an issue where I was spending so much time because I did all the formatting, and back then it was before Microsoft Word.
Uh-huh.
I was using a Trash 80 computer with a green screen. I'm doing it at work, and it became really, really difficult for me to continue to work. So I had to leave after like this. I believe the sixth
issue,
the sixth volume,
yeah.
And wasn't able to. But it got me to write some things, including a different parallel time where Victoria Winters came back to gain revenge on the family who had.
I remember that. Yes. Yeah.
And I did that because Alexandra always complained that she never got to play the heavy.
Yeah.
So I kind of figured that was perfect. But I changed everybody around. Carolyn even became a Catholic nun. So, I wanted it to be completely different. So but it was a lot of fun. It really, really was.
Oh, great. Which Nancy probably would have had a ball playing that too. Let's talk a little bit about her, because she's the only actor in Dark Shadows who was in every single storyline. Even the short ones, like Return to 1796, 1995. Thayer David was in almost all of them, but he was not in the Introduction of Barnabas storyline. Nancy was in all of the storylines, which is fantastic. And she was there from the beginning until the end. One of the core characters in the show was Carolyn right from the start. And Nancy Barrett she always called herself a character actress, which she was, and we got to see that in the show as she took on these different personas, these different characters. She loves the stage. She's have this great book, any Dark Shadows fan should have, and many do, is Barnabas and Company by Craig Hamrick, the late great Craig Hamrick, and he talks a lot about each of the actors in the show, gives their backgrounds and stuff, and talks about Nancy's first Broadway show, which was Pickwick, the musical, which she was in with Davy Jones from the Monkees and Charlotte Rae, and just brilliant stage actors in Dark Shadows. Grayson Hall loved Nancy, said she was probably the best actor in the show. I'm not going to point to one specific actor on Dark Shadows and say that is the best actor on the show. That would be too difficult to do because there's so many great actors in the show. But if you were going to, pick a top five, or definitely she is certainly in the top actors in the show. Every character Nancy played in Dark Shadows, she added layers and nuances to those characters. She made you care about every single character she played in the show. And it was the writers too, but it was also Nancy's performance in those roles that made you feel for each of those characters, every single one of them. And they were all different. They were all distinct and unique and interesting and fast. They all had their interesting quirks. And she brought them all to life in really unique ways. Amazing actress. Before we talk about her characters, is there anything either of you want to say about Nancy Barrett as an actress that you find compelling?
Well, I would say that basically you covered it. You had a really great range, and her character was unbelievable.
Yeah.
I was impressed. She probably was impressed by her as a child, but when I got older, I could really see it a lot more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think now she was one of my favorites on the show.
Excellent. Yeah. What about you, Joe?
Well, the interesting thing is that young child, as a young boy, I was enamored more with Alexandra and with Kate and with Donna Wandry. So I didn't really pay that much attention to Nancy until I started watching it as an adult. And I didn't appreciate how wonderful she really, really was. And even recently, rewatching, I thought that probably the most, and I hate to say it, boring character of hers was Charity. But then I rewatched it again, and the nuances that she had as Charity were just unbelievable. You know, first her being so pious, and then her being so full of life. I mean, you know, it changed my opinion of not only that character, but some of her other characters. And we'll get into this, but I just could not believe her doing Carolyn Loomis, and just the nuances, even though they were the same character as Carolyn Stoddard, the nuances, I mean, the hair changes, the way she acted were just the same, but totally different. And you have to really be a really, really good actress to be able to do something like that. And she just pulled it off tremendously.
For sure. Even her Carolyn in House of Dark Shadows was different from her Carolyn in the TV show. It was just a different variation on Carolyn. And we'll talk about it. She was in Night of Dark Shadows too, as Claire Jenkins, yet another character. So since she was in every storyline, rather than go through each character, let's just hit each storyline and talk just share a little bit of our thoughts on each of her characters, if we have anything that we'd like to say on her characters in those storylines. So we start out with pre-Barnabas, with the 1966 Victoria Winters search for her parentage. We have the Burke Devlin revenge story, and Carolyn is there for in that very beginning storyline, and we first see her. She is trapped in this house. She wants to get. She's kind of the wild child. We see her dancing at the Blue Whale, having a great time. Poor Joe Haskell, her boyfriend, is there, sad as she's and frustrated as she's dancing with all the guys at the Blue Whale. So Carolyn she's kind of in the beginning, she's kind of a spoiled, like all the Collins family members, other than Elizabeth, I would say, they're all, even, I would say they're all troubled, even Elizabeth too, but they're all troubled people at Collinwood, as with any sort of gothic romance, gothic horror, etc. story, the core family they're troubled, and Carolyn certainly is as well. She's trapped in this house in this small town in Maine, and she wants to break free, and she's a bit spoiled as well, and she acts out a lot. And as we go along, we do see, as the show goes on, we'll see how Carolyn develops and changes. But I guess thoughts on the early Carolyn in this part of the show.
Well, I have to say that, believe it or not, I didn't watch the pre-Barnabas episodes until about 2 years ago.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, so it was very recent for me.
Uh-huh.
And she was a spoiled brat. She really was. And she was horrible to Vicky.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely horrible.
Yep.
But, I didn't hate her because it was just another, I said, my goodness, it's just another aspect of her great acting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. But she did grow up a lot too. I mean, when she had to take over for her mom.
In the Laura storyline, yeah.
Really bad for Joe Haskell, though. I think they would have made. In fact, my most recent post on Many Faces of Nancy Barrett talks about that, where she could have had a great life with him, and unfortunately, she was enamored with Burke, and that didn't work out well. So.
Yeah, and it's the first example I think we see of Carolyn being attracted to the most dangerous guy in the room. Later, it will evolve into monsters. She's attracted to the most dangerous supernatural character in the room. But it starts with Burke, and eventually we'll go down the road as we see with other, with Chris Jennings and Jeb and all of this. And there's the Atom. There's is she, isn't she? There's a little bit of that there as well. What about you, Beth? Any thoughts on the very early depiction of Carolyn?
All I remember when I was a kid, I thought, I love her hair.
She has beautiful hair. Oh my God, yes.
But yeah, I rewatched it. I thought, yeah, well, Brad, but kind of came around, and started to her. Yeah, I liked it. I mean, I thought she was doing it, and I wanted to like her. Not really like that character, but filled behind me. Yeah,
You can see by the flip in the picture behind me.
Yeah.
Just incredible.
better once it got straight.
Yeah.
That was the age. I mean, that was.
Yeah. And Carolyn knew how to have a good time. She she was the life of the blue whale for sure. And it's funny in this quote, the quote that kicks off her section in this Barnabas and Company book is from Nancy Barrett. Says from Afternoon TV, May 1969. Carolyn isn't bad, but she isn't always good either. As an actress, I try to make the reasons for what I'm doing very clear. And it's obvious in that early storyline that Carolyn has gone through some stuff. She is going through some stuff. It's not only that she's spoiled, I think also the whole situation with Paul Stoddard leaving, and the fact that her mother has kept herself in the house for 18 years. And then Roger and David come back, and her cousin David is also this really troubled child who does some really concerning things as well. She loves her Uncle Roger too. He always calls her Kitten. I love that. Through the whole series, I love that Roger was a kitten, because his pet name for her is so cute. So we go into then the Laura the Phoenix storyline, and we see Carolyn evolve here a bit, especially when Elizabeth goes into the coma that Laura puts her into. She chooses Carolyn to run things, much to Roger's chagrin. But there's a reason she chooses Carolyn. We see, even though she's, was kind of rotten in that story, early storyline, Carolyn, there's a strength to Carolyn. There is an inner strength to Carolyn, and I think her mother sees that, and that is why she chooses her to. Which Roger, I love Roger, but Roger was not the correct choice. Carolyn was the correct choice to run things. And we start to see a lot more of that side of Carolyn. There's still that wild child there, but there's also pride in there of being a Collins and running things. She can handle herself, in other words. I don't know, any thoughts on her in the Laura storyline?
Kind of felt a little bit sorry for her character, like Burke much, and he didn't really. He was just using.
Burke was just using her, yeah.
So
I just found it interesting that she didn't really, because she had all these other things going on. I would have thought that she would have been jealous of Laura because Laura and Burke were so close. But I think by that time she probably had gotten over it because she started treating Vicky like she should, instead of constantly being, one day, saying she was her best friend, she didn't want her to leave, and then the next day she wanted to kick her out of the house.
Yeah.
So, but she definitely mellowed by that point, and she wasn't such. Well, she does become a wild child again a little bit later, as we see.
Right, with Buzz, yeah. But there's a reason for that. There's something that precipitates that, of course. But with I think also Joe dumping her kind of was a bit of a wake up call too, because she was terrible to Joe. Poor Joe. She grows up as it goes along. She learns from the things that she does, and she does start treating Vicky more like a sister. Whether she is her sister or not, it was never definitively said, but that we get that sense that there is a sisterly bond between two of them, and I really like that a lot. And we see that develop as the show goes on. All right, folks. So we took a little pause. I'm going to edit out. We're still getting some feedback, but it's Beth's audio is much. She switched to a different device. So we're going to continue on here. We were talking about Carolyn and Laura's storyline, and we're now moving on to Carolyn and the introduction of Barnabas Collins' storyline. And concurrently with the Barnabas storyline, we have the Jason McGuire storyline going on with Elizabeth. And Carolyn is very frustrated with the situation. She doesn't understand why her mother is letting this guy live at the house and is going to marry her, this smiling snake, Jason McGuire. And so she starts dating Buzz. She goes back to being the more wild child Carolyn. But there's that reason there. Like, well, if you're going to do this, then I'm going to do this kind of a thing. And then, of course, Barnabas old Barnabas to regain his youth, fights Carolyn, and she becomes his thrall. Then we get Barnabas controlling Carolyn. There's the sinister Carolyn who's helping Barnabas. Lots of fun stuff happening in this storyline. Any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it's really, really interesting that my favorite part of it, of course, is when she is in the thrall of Barnabas. She has that ethereal look to her where she walks into a room and it's almost like she's floating across the floor when she comes to him, whenever he summons her. And especially after they come back from 1790, after Vicky comes back from 1795, when she comes downstairs and comes across the room to him, and he says to her, I need to have time with Vicky. You need to distract Dr. Hoffman. And she was just wonderful. It was almost like a Hammer film, the way that she acted, like in the thrall of a vampire. It was really, really cool. And but with Buzz, everybody loves Buzz. And the interesting thing is, I don't know whether people know, and I don't know whether something recently has happened, but he's still alive. He's in his 90s.
Michael Hadge, yes, indeed, yeah.
Yeah, and I think I saw a picture of her at a Big Apple convention in 2004 when she had really, really short hair. And I almost believe that he was at that same event because it looks like he's sitting behind her. So I don't know whether she's ever met him again since then. But yeah, it's pretty interesting.
I know that. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Beth.
No, that's all. I just said, that's. I had no idea he was even still around.
Yeah, Tom Holtz, who was on the Literary License podcast, interviewed Michael Hadge for one of their episodes a few years ago, and you can find that on YouTube. Actually, the interview with Michael Hadge is the only interview I've ever seen or heard with him, and it's great hearing him. He talks about Dark Shadows and his time on the show and doing theater, and it was great hearing his voice and hearing him share his memory. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes too, because that's worth checking out. So with Nancy Barrett playing Carolyn in the Barnabas storyline, do we have any thoughts, Beth, on that?
Well, I think Joe pretty much covered it. She does have that ability to completely change, like, at the drop of a hat, and that was another time when she changed characters in the same storyline and did a great job.
Yeah, she did. It's a definite different. It's a huge contrast when she's in the thrall of the vampire. She's very sinister and cunning, and it's really fun to see her in that mode. Then we go to 1795, and like most of the actors in the show, she gets to play a completely new character. And this, I think, too, is where we really see even more of Nancy as a character actress, because she plays the giggling, kind of hypochondriac heiress, Millicent Collins. I love Millicent. She's almost bird-like in her sort of fluttering way that she behaves. But as it goes on, again, you really start feeling for Millicent, especially when Nathan Forbes, sets his sights on her and sees he can get some money by marrying her, and they do the whole subplot from Gaslight, which they use in the Dark Shadows, because Dark Shadows didn't only use horror stories; they used things like suspense and mystery stories and things like that. And Gaslight was a great choice there with Millicent. Such a great character. You really feel for her as she goes through all of this and becomes she becomes also a victim of Barnabas. Millicent goes through a lot, and she's a great character. Any thoughts on Millicent Collins?
Well, the interesting thing is we're introduced to Millicent during the party that's at the old house before they go into the past. You can see that they haven't, flushed out her character yet, because, her hair is a little bit different. It's not as, it's not in the style that she wears it as Millicent in 1795. But it gives us an idea of, what Nancy's going to look like. But she was just amazing. She played naive so well. And then she played a different type of crazy. different than the crazy we see in Carolyn Fredericks in 1985.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just amazing the nuances that she's able to put into characters that, you know, if you didn't know that they were all Nancy Barrett, you would think they were all different people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's how good she is. And I wish I had known that when I was watching it originally. But, you know, I was just so involved in the Gothic horror and the time travel and all the other things, parallel universes, which I've always been into. You know, it's pretty cool. But you know, I did feel sorry for her with Nathan. It's a shame because Nathan turned. You know, he was such a good guy in the beginning. I mean, yeah, he was a ladies' man and everything. You know, when he first tried to hit on Vicky when she came to the past, but he was good to her in the beginning. You know, he sheltered her and did all these things, and then, you know, money, as it does to a lot of people, turned him around, and you know, he became a cad.
I think she managed to play a character in Millicent that was, she was both. I felt sorry for her, but at the same time, she was annoying in the way she was supposed to be. I think, you know, a little bit like, wake up. You just wanted to say, wake up, and this guy's an idiot.
Yeah.
But I agree with Joe. I liked him at first too, you know. And of course, you know. Anyway, I just think she did a great job doing bringing forth both of those feelings about the character.
Excellent. Yeah. It's funny for all. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
And then, of course, we see her again, you know, when they go back to 1796 and 1797.
Yeah. The
interesting thing is, and unfortunately they couldn't do anything about that, by that time her hair had changed color. So it was darker. You know, but, you know, you deal with those things. There's not much you could do. At least they didn't put a wig on her like they did when, you know, she was sick that one episode and they put a wig on the other girl. And
Diana Walker. Yeah. fake Carolyn for one episode. So yeah, Millicent, great character, and you really do feel for her as she becomes, you know, the strain of what happens to her leads to her kind of falling apart. Having even later, we find out in 1840 when Daniel talks about Millicent, it sounds like she never really kind of fully recovered from those experiences in 17. She was such a fragile person. It was sad. Then we come back to the present. We have the Adam and Eve and Dream Curse storyline, and of course Carolyn is also prominent in this storyline as well because Adam develops. He sees Carol. He falls in love with Carolyn. This creation, the Frankenstein creation of Dark Shadows. He is in love with Carolyn, but then when Nicholas Blair enters the picture, he sort of kind of twists Adam a bit, and so. But there's an interesting dynamic there because Carolyn, at first, I feel like Carolyn just felt bad for Adam. Like I think she really did care about Adam. She tried to help Adam. She helped hide him in Collinwood and stuff. But then there's that one scene in the old house where it's almost implied that Carolyn maybe might have some feeling for Adam, and I don't know if some people interpret it that way, but it does they do have a conversation about that in the old house. I feel like Carolyn she feels bad for Adam. I think she sees Adam as a friend, as someone he saved her life at one point, you know, when she almost fell off Widow's Hill and he pulled her up. I think she cares about Adam, but I don't think she feels that way about Adam. I don't know. Any thoughts on Carolyn during that storyline?
Well, I just wanted to say one more thing about Millicent before.
Please do, yes.
She had her problems, but she was really smart when she changed all her money over to her brother.
That's true. Good point. Yes.
She did the right thing there. But Carolyn with Adam was really, really interesting. I just think Adam was just lonely.
Yeah.
He was just lonely, and this person who was being so good to him, you know, cooking him meals. I mean, she actually made meals for him. She didn't bring him a sandwich like Mrs. Johnson always did. The only thing that Mrs. Johnson could do was, except for the Indian pudding and, her boiled meals that we heard about but we never saw. It always seemed to be sandwiches, and Carolyn was cooking him bacon and eggs and bringing all that kind of stuff. So she was really good to him. And I think it was because he was lonely, and it was really the first woman he had ever seen. So everybody, he sold Julia, but nothing against Julia, nothing against Grayson, but
We have to remember, Barnabas was the life force for Adam, and Barnabas was obsessive in that way. And Adam was similar in that sense. He was very, very fixated on Carolyn. She maybe had some feeling toward Adam, but I don't know if it was. I think it was more she just cared about Adam. I don't know. What do you think, Beth?
Well, I kind of felt like she did, but then she only would up to a point, of course, because of his situation.
Yeah.
But I felt sorry for him too. It really had some of the same feeling of sadness that I got when I read the novel, Frankenstein.
Yes.
At the end, you just feel sorry for him that he's so screwed up.
Exactly. You feel for the monster.
Yeah.
Frankenstein, and you feel for Adam too. And I know a lot of people don't like Adam because of how he starts behaving, but you have to remember he's kind of childlike in a way. He grows in intelligence as he goes along, but it's Nicholas Blair really manipulates Adam because when Professor Stokes was teaching Adam, he was kind of in the right hands there. He finally had somebody who was teaching him. And then we had Carolyn, giving him books to read and things like that. But when Nicholas gets involved, Nicholas, of course, is a corrupting influence on Adam.
And he's being in so many different directions as well. It's really difficult for him to decide, what's good. And he's been rejected by so many people. I mean, he's rejected because he has scars because of the way he looks. He feels he was rejected by Barnabas because when he beat him with the cane, because he was attacking Willie. And of course, Willie was horrible to him.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's why he was so distrustful of everybody.
Right.
And like you said, Nicholas, twisted him around. And then, of course, Cassandra trying to kill him.
But Carolyn is always kind of a constant where, she gives him the sweater and she's kind to Adam consistently, And during that storyline, too, the Elizabeth premature burial storyline starts as well. And that goes into the Werewolf and Quentin storyline, too. And Carolyn ultimately, she cares about her family deeply, and she cares deeply about her mother as well. And she's so concerned about her mother's situation. So we go into the Quentin and Quentin's ghost werewolf storyline. And the next monster in the show comes in the werewolf. The Larry Talbot of the show, Chris Jennings and Carolyn and Chris start their relationship as well. And there's such that great scene where the werewolf attacks Carolyn in the mausoleum, and Elizabeth is in her coffin, alive, but everyone thinks she's dead. That is what awakens Elizabeth, is Carolyn being in danger because she's being attacked by the werewolf. And I love that. It just shows that bond between Carolyn and Elizabeth, and that is what brings Elizabeth out of that comatose state. Any thoughts on Carolyn during this particular part of the show?
Well, she even shows this is where it's interesting. She reverts a little bit when Donna Friedlander comes, her friend from school.
Oh yes, yeah.
She meets up with Chris, and she seems to have feelings towards him, and you can see Carolyn getting jealous again a little bit, and so that was interesting. But once again, she's disappointed because Chris has a secret that she doesn't know about, and he seems to constantly he'll be good to her for a while, and then he'll push her away, or he'll disappear, and she just doesn't understand that, which is a shame. But I go back to saying that she was best with Joe. altogether, it was great. She finally got some romance moving forward, but we'll get into that as we get into the other storylines.
Beth, any thoughts on Carolyn during the werewolf storyline?
No, I that's a little bit foggy for me. I'd have to kind of review it.
I love that she has the silver bracelet too. When the werewolf sees it, he's repelled by the silver bracelet. There's some really fun moments during that storyline too. And I also love that we always have the core family is always kind of is there. Even when we do time travel, as we're going to do in just a minute, we come back. We always have that core family from the very beginning still there. And Carolyn, of course, is a key part of that. During the Quentin storyline, we did have a brief jaunt. 2 weeks in 1796, return to 1796. We do see Millicent again, as Joe pointed out. Any thoughts there? Kind of got some retread of what happened before as Barnabas is changing what happens there, but any thoughts there?
I'm trying to remember, was it 1796? Now, this is where it gets a little bit confusing. Was it 1796 or 1797 where she goes to the jail cell?
It was return to 1796, because I think Barnabas changes things and bites Nathan Forbes this time.
Oh.
So that he will, because he's trying to help Vicky. That's why he goes back to save Vicky. So that's where she goes to the jail cell, and she's kind of batty, her usual fluttery self as Millicent there.
Which is interesting, because by that time she had been attacked by Barnabas, and she said she's acting like she was attacked by Barnabas.
Yeah, it's true, and I just blame that on her kind of mental state at that point.
Yeah, that's true, but it also has something to do. It's one of my biggest pet peeves, and I understand, continuity.
Yeah.
It drives me crazy, and we'll get into that a little bit. But
same here, and that's why I was like, why? One of the things I also that occurred to me is when Barnabas puts somebody in his power, they can't. One of the things they typically aren't able to do is tell other people about him. And Nathan Forbes seems completely able to tell Millicent what's going on here about Barnabas. So I just think because Nathan is such a narcissist at this point that his will has overcome even that of Barnabas, perhaps. But yeah, there are some questionable continuity things there. Then we go into 1897, and we get yet another character for Nancy Barrett, Charity Trask, and then we'll have the possessed by Pansy Faye Charity Trask, which I see as a very distinct, because it's a completely different person who is possessing Charity Trask. It's Pansy Faye. So we have this pious daughter of Reverend Gregory Trask and Minerva Trask, who is very straight-laced and very pious person, very serious character. And then we have the bawdy dance hall singer and mentalist Pansy Faye, who possesses her so much fun. You can tell that Nancy Barrett is just having a ball playing both of those characters, but particularly the Cockney dance hall singer, who was originally played by Kay Fry, but when the character gets killed off, her spirit possesses the pious Charity Trask. So any thoughts on either of those characters?
Oh, okay, I was just going to say, I think that was a chance for when she did Pansy Faye, and she did a great job with accents. It showed her ability to do a good Cockney accent or anything else, really. I mean, I think she did variations of other accents. But anyway, that's what stood out for me the most with when she, but then also able to change from one to the other, really, in no time at all.
Nice contrast.
Yeah, contrast.
But I had mentioned Charity before because I had gone back and watched it because I thought she was probably the most boring character that I remember. But she really wasn't. I mean, she had the nuances when she found out about, her father responsible for the death of her mother, the way she acted then. And then, of course, she didn't just become possessed by the spirit of Pansy Faye. She was kissed by Jameson, who was possessed by Patofi, yes. Which is a double possession. Wanting her to be like that. But it was interesting the way that that she acted around her father. That was just a riot when she was dancing, and she sort of gave him a bump with her hip, and then her going up and letting Edward out after Angelique had removed the curse from him, so he didn't think he was a manservant anymore. And she was so happy that she heard his voice, and then when she opened the door, he was completely different, and she was upset about that. But she a lot of people get tired. They keep saying, "Oh, I get tired of hearing that song," but she was much more than just that song. And she really was in love. Well, Charity was too, but Pansy really was in love with Gwen, and it was a shame that he just didn't return love to anybody until Amanda. Really, to be quite honest. I mean, yeah, he used Beth. He really used everybody, all the women in his life until Amanda came along. So.
Yeah, I also like that. Well, before she fell for Quentin, she loved Carl Collins too. There was a sweetness there too between them. And I loved her as Charity, especially as Pansy. After Carolyn, I would say Pansy's probably my second favorite Nancy Barrett portrayal because she's just so much fun. Besides being this body dance hall singer, you care about her. She's kind of has a good heart ultimately, and I really liked her in that role quite a bit. And then we come back from 1897.
One more thing, although there was an issue that really it hurt a lot of us watching Dark Shadows for the first time. When the longest cliffhanger. Because we all thought he was dead. We had no idea that he was going to come back.
Yep.
Devastating for us to have her stake him, and then we didn't find out for weeks and weeks and weeks that he was still alive. So, yeah, that was really tough. And that's probably I needed her. From
lots of angry letters to ABC.
He came back, and then, that was pretty interesting the way that she reacted to him, when he came back. So
I do have a spoiler warning at the top of the show, so for those who haven't seen it, it is the most shocking cliffhanger in all of Dark Shadows, probably. And it lasts for quite a while. It is quite a moment in Dark Shadows, to be certain. And there was a very strong reaction from the fans when that aired in 1969, for sure. But great moment. So then we come back from 1897, and we have the Leviathans storyline. And Carolyn is a strong focus in this storyline, and both of this kind of subplots that are happening here, because we have the Paul Stoddard aspect. Paul Stoddard comes back into the storyline. It's interesting seeing Carolyn and Paul interacting with each other, and then Elizabeth, Carolyn, and Paul interacting. Lots of fun stuff there. And then, of course, we have the whole, we have Jeb Hawks, who is the Leviathan creature, the Leviathan Messiah, this being that is going to lead the Leviathans. And Carolyn is meant to be his bride, but he actually genuinely, this being, this creature, falls in love with Carolyn. Again, it's like all the monsters, Carolyn, all roads lead to Carolyn, and the new monster of the storyline, kind of connecting in that way, it seems. But this time, Carolyn feels the same way, and they do get married. So she becomes Carolyn Stoddard Hawks, and she never finds out that he is a monster, but love changes Jeb in a way, because Jeb, as Roger calls him when we first start seeing Jeb, he is a cheap, insufferable pig, but he kind of changes a bit, he softens a bit. He's still a smug jerk because he's Jeb, but he's changes because of his love for Carolyn, and Carolyn does genuinely care about Jeb. So when he falls off Widow's Hill, when he dies, she is affected by that, and we'll even see that in the next storyline in the present day, that she's still grieving his death. So any thoughts on Carolyn during the Leviathan storyline?
Well, I don't know, when you mentioned that, she never was lucky in love. She always picked the wrong guy, and it just seems to play out in so many of her different roles. But you can see a lot of changes in Carolyn during this time when she actually falls in love with him.
Yeah.
And I did feel bad for her.
One thing I can see why Jeb and Carolyn connected. I don't know, everyone can, but if we look at the wild child aspect of Carolyn's personality, the untamed Carolyn that we saw back in the beginning and that we always see flashes of as we go along, Jeb also kind of reflects that. He is very rebellious. He's rebellious. He rebels against the Leviathans themselves. There's the scene where he grabs the antique in the antique shop and smashes it and says, "Do it too. Go ahead." They both kind of share that rebellious quality. I can see how they would bond in that respect. And some of that in Carolyn maybe was, as she's grown up and experienced a lot of these traumatic things, as she's changed a bit, but that little spark of that aspect of her personality, I think, is still in there, and Jeb kind of pulls that out of her a little bit, I think. Anyway, Joe, any thoughts?
Well, Jeb, I mean, from his very beginning, every aspect of his growing up drooled over her, including the baby, but that was probably a different type of. But I mean, it's true. I mean, Michael and Alexander were just enthralled with her, and I don't know whether she noticed it as much with Michael as she did with Alexander. Alexander was always, following her around, in the antique shop and all that kind of stuff. But I eventually felt sorry for Jeb too, because although I hated him for putting the curse back on Barnabas, but it was necessary because him as a vampire was much more exciting than when he wasn't a vampire.
Yes.
From that perspective, yeah. But that was one good thing that I did like that they did. They differentiated him as a vampire under Leviathan curse than they did under Angelique's curse, because they put that gray hair in his head. So that was pretty interesting. But she was a great screamer. We haven't mentioned that. She was the best screamer on the set.
Agree. Hard agree on that. Yes.
Got to use that a lot, in the werewolf story and also in the Leviathan story. She got to scream a lot. So.
Yep. I do wish, it was Danny Horde in his blog said that one of the missed opportunities there was her not finding out that Jeb killed her father, who she finally reunited with. And that would have been interesting to see how that would have played out. Like, how would she have reacted to that information? Because she was having dreams, these kind of prophetic dreams that implied that she was going to find out about that, and then she never did find out about that.
Out that he killed, that he not only killed her father, but it killed her possible sister. Because he killed.
Yes, true. Good point. Yes, Jeb also killed Vicky. So as we find out in the past, that Jeb killed Vicky off screen. Which is huge too. So we find out Jeb killed Vicky and Paul. Wow, that's, I don't know if there's much, if she could that bounce back from that one, but then we go into parallel time, 1970 parallel time, parallel universe, where Carolyn is married to William Hollinshead Loomis, the author, and we have this whole Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, the Edward Albee play, the dynamic between the two of them. There's that. They're not doing that play specifically, but there are echoes of those characters, I think, in William and Carolyn, and live in the old house. And as Joe mentioned earlier, while this is Carolyn, it is a completely different Carolyn. It's a different variation on Carolyn. She's a heavy drinker. So is William Hollinshead Loomis. They both are very different take on the character in a parallel universe who's had these different experiences. And also, this is the first time we see John Carlin and Nancy Barrett paired up, which then becomes a thing because I think they see these two work really well together. They're both such strong actors. John Carlin also, if you're going to pick, top actors in the show, John Carlin's going to be on that list too. Absolutely. So having Nancy and John Carlin together is really such a great dynamic because they care about each other, but they're so combative with each other as well. And it's such a really fascinating thing. And then you throw a vampire into the mix now with them. Barnabas, what a just fascinating, really creative, and always with Dark Shadows. It's like, wow, this is so wild and cool that they're doing this. It's just amazing. So any thoughts on Carolyn Loomis in Parallel Time?
She was my favorite character of all of Nancy's portrayals. She really was.
Why so?
And just because she of the nuances that she was able to do, even though, like I said before, the character was the same really as Carolyn Stoddard, but the hair changes, the way that she held her head, and my favorite line from the entire show is, "Who are you and what are you doing in this room?"
Yeah.
So well done. The problem is that she was only in 15 episodes as Carolyn Loomis because they were doing the movie at the same time.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
That was the most unbelievably creative thing that they did, so that they were able to film the movie and the TV show at the same time. Putting him in a coffin and having him go off for a while, and then coming up with all these reasons as to why these other characters were not there. They sent Quentin sent Hoffman away because she was so mean to Maggie, and she went off on a vacation for a while so she could be in the movie, and it was just really well. But unfortunately, because of that, she was only in 15 episodes. So my two favorite characters were only in a limited amount of episodes. So I'll tell you what the next one is after when we get to. It was fabulous. She really, really was. And like I said, she's my favorite. And probably because it's parallel time, too. I love the idea of parallel time, whatever. I mean, I'm going to mention Star Trek now. My favorite episode of all time was Mirror, Mirror.
Yeah.
So, where they go to an alter where Spock has a beard and all that kind of stuff. So
Yes, that's an excellent episode of Star Trek. I love classic episode, and Parallel Time is just great in the show. I love Parallel Time too. It's just fun to see a completely different universe with the same, actors playing different versions of their characters based on different experiences. Beth, any thoughts on Carolyn Loomis?
All I can say is I enjoyed seeing those two actors do different things like that compared to what they did at the beginning of the show. So it was interesting to me to see their range. Both of them were great.
Absolutely. They worked so well together, John Carlin and Nancy Barrett. It was just such a great dynamic with the two of them. It's also extremely shocking how her demise in the show, with Roger, Parallel Time Roger, who goes off the deep end and kills Carolyn and Elizabeth, which I know it's not our primary time band versions of those characters, but it's still quite shocking to see that happen. Sort of like House of Dark Shadows too. It's shocking to see those characters die because we care about those characters, but it's just a different version of those characters getting killed off. But I'm sure the writers had a great time doing that. Like, well, we could go down this road with these characters and do something completely shocking and different.
They don't have to worry about continuity there because they can create something new.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And then the other thing with the interesting dynamic, the contrast between Carolyn Stoddard's relationship with Willie. She was creeped out by him.
Yes. Yeah.
Her relationship, because he climbs in her window after she's rescued from Adam, and or this dream, and then she has to suffer having to have the dream when they pull her down to the old house, and Professor Stokes tells her she has to have the dream. So it's and then of course the way Willie treated her when he first showed up, even though it was James Hall and not
the same character.
The same character, and he creeped her out, and she had to pull a gun on him.
Yeah,
so
totally.
Yeah,
and of course, even during that scene where he crawls in her window during the Adam storyline, at this point, everybody still thinks that Willie is the one who kidnapped Maggie. He'd been in Windcliff and everything for quite a while. So, Willie is on shaky ground quite a bit. He creeped everyone out at that point, but they know, Cousin Barnabas, he works for Cousin Barnabas, so Cousin Barnabas vouches for him, but still. So we then go, and we'll talk about the movies at the end too, because I want to touch on that, but we go to the next storyline. We go from parallel time to 1995. Talk about shocking. And another arguably most shocking moment in the show is when we see the destroyed Collinwood. But we get a different version of Carolyn. Here we have Carolyn in the future who has gone mad. Middle-aged Carolyn who has gone mad after the Collinwood has been destroyed, as we find out by the ghost of Gerard Stiles, who we then later find out was Judah Zachary, posing as Gerard Stiles. Collins' family is dead. Carolyn is sort of the sole survivor. Well, Mrs. Johnson, Professor Stokes, and Quentin, of course, Quentin, the immortal Quentin, who has also gone mad. And Carolyn in this storyline is amazing. Just all of her little physical tics and just the way that she eats the grapes and just everything she does is so heart-wrenching to see Carolyn in this state. Like, what? Oh my goodness, what happened to Carolyn? This is awful, poor Carolyn, but she's gone mad. And her Fredericks, as she calls herself, because she's disconnected from the name Collins and has all the relics of Collinwood in her cottage. And it's just such a heart-wrenching scene, too, even when Barnabas kisses her on the forehead and he's trying to get her to remember who she was, and he ultimately succeeds in doing that because she does. And we see, I mentioned the inner strength of Carolyn, and we see that reemerge. It reasserts itself one last time as she helps Barnabas and Julia by giving them the clues that will lead, tells them the clues that will lead to the destruction of Collinwood, so that they can have that information to try to prevent it in the summer of 1970. This is a really key character in 1995 is Fredericks, aka Carolyn in the future. Any thoughts on 1995 Carolyn?
She's my second favorite.
Okay. Yeah.
And instead, she's in limited episodes, maybe 4 or 5 episodes.
Great. Yeah.
But she was just incredible to play a character like that, and then have the strength at the very end. It cost her life, to do what she did. But you're absolutely right as far as the eating of grapes and standing in front of Stokes' mirror, which distorts her face, and then coming out of the mausoleum, the secret room of the mausoleum. All of those things. I just wish that 1995 had lasted longer because I really, really enjoyed it. And to see the destruction of Collinwood, and then to be at festivals and hear Cy Tomashoff talk about how they did that over a weekend, where they would come in the weekend and destroy Collinwood, and then the next weekend they had to go back and fix it up again.
Yeah.
It was amazing what they were able to do on the budget that they had. And the limited, ability to do special effects. I don't fault them for that. I mean, even though you have the bouncing up and down Reverend Trask, and sometimes, when in 1897, when she made the doppelganger of Barnabas, and he comes out of the mirror and he's like 10 times taller than she is. I mean, that didn't happen. But, but it was just amazing the things that they could do. Changing portraits. I think that was their most amazing thing. Changing a portrait, when Angelique's portrait appeared, when Josette's portrait turned into a monster, when Josette's portrait turned into the Laura portrait. I mean, all of those things were just amazing that they were able to do. So I know that's not Nancy.
Oh, it's what they were able to pull off is remarkable. I mean, they were doing this live to tape. And, it's unbelievable what they were able to do. When people, by today's standards, sometimes people make fun of the special effects. Like, you know what? You try doing that every single day live and see how you do with that. And people say, "Oh, Dark Shadows had a low budget." It didn't actually, by daytime TV standards. Dark Shadows had a pretty substantial budget compared to other daytime shows of the time, partly because of the special effects that they had to do, that they had to pull off. And it's remarkable that they were able to do what they did. Beth, what about you? Any thoughts on Carolyn in 1995?
No, that's another area where I'm a little, haven't watched that one very often or in a while.
Great portrayal of Carolyn during that time period. Just a great 2-week storyline. That's just to set up what's to come. It's so good, so good. So we go into then the summer of 1970 storyline, which is the ghosts of Gerard and Daphne, the vampire Roxanne, and Carolyn does play a role in this storyline. She becomes possessed by Letitia, who we will meet in 1840 during this storyline. Any thoughts on Carolyn? Is she still grieving the death of Jeb Hawks here too during the summer of 1970? She meets Sebastian Shaw, the astrologer, who looks just like Jeb, but is not Jeb. He's attracted to Maggie. He does not feel that way about Carolyn. And as it turns out, this is a different person, but she thinks he's Jeb. She at first, and she has to kind of accept that he isn't, and it's a bit sad. And then she becomes possessed by Letitia, thanks to Gerard. So we have some interesting stuff happening here. Any thoughts on the summer of 1970?
Well, it's another chance for Carolyn to bring Letitia back, and that's always kind of fun. And other than that, I can't think of anything. Like I said, toward the end of the show, I didn't watch it as much because I was going off to other things. And anyway, that's basically all I have to say about that.
Yeah.
All right.
No, that's okay. She doesn't do a ton during this part of the show. She's in it. She does play a role, but she's not as prominent as say some of the other storylines. But she's certainly a factor there. Joe, any thoughts on summer of 1970?
At the very beginning, she really isn't. I mean, she sits and reads, about astrology and stuff like that. It isn't until later where she becomes possessed by Letitia. That, and the playroom comes into effect and all that kind of stuff that, when she finally gets possessed by Letitia, because we find out later that Letitia was so close to Gerard that, we see her in the playroom with Gerard and, looking at the miniature model of Rose Cottage and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, but it was interesting that they decided to have the playroom only appear certain times, and that there was a linen closet other times.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is the last time we will actually see Carolyn. We will see we'll see Elizabeth briefly later, but for the present, this is the last storyline set in the present day. This is the last time we're going to see Carolyn. Last time we're going to see David. Roger is off in Europe, so we don't even get to see Roger during this storyline, sadly. But this is kind of our goodbye to Carolyn as well, because we will not see her again as that character. But we will see some more Nancy Barrett characters, because we're going to go to 1840. We saw the possessed Carolyn possessed by Letitia. Now we actually will see the living Letitia, who was brought to Collinwood by Gerard. She's living in Rose Cottage with Flora. She's close with Flora. She eventually will fall in love with Desmond Collins. And Letitia is very much Letitia Fay. She must be related to Pansy somehow. Letitia is similar to Pansy. She's a Cockney showgirl and a mentalist as well. But she's not as bawdy, I would say, as Pansy. She doesn't have as much of a hard edge. I think Pansy has a little bit more of an edge to her than Letitia does. It's a slight variation on that type of character, I would say. I think Letitia's a little not as hard edged, I would say, as Pansy. But any thoughts on Letitia Fay?
We do find out in one of the big Finnish audios.
Oh yes.
Connection between Pansy and Letitia. I can't remember. I think it's Carriage of the Damned, if I'm not mistaken. I may be wrong, but Yeah, Letitia was fun. I enjoyed Letitia. She didn't get, I loved Pansy, and I know she was your favorite, but she did get on people's nerves sometimes. I don't think Letitia ever got on anybody's nerves.
No.
I really don't. But, well, with the exception of maybe Gerard, when. But by that time he was possessed by. But it was interesting. She got possessed by Gerard first, and then she was helping Dr. Hoffman,
Yes.
with reassembling his body, and
Zachary, yep.
Zachary's body. Yeah, so that was pretty interesting, and she was an interesting assistant, because she was like, "Oh, you must be a magician," being able to do all these things with lightning and all that kind of stuff. So that was pretty cool. But then she does fall in love with Flora's son, Desmond, who brought that horrible head back. And she really was good. And you're absolutely right. They found magic with her and Carlin, so they paired them together. And that was really good. That was really, really good.
I liked both of the Cockney characters that she did. So
yeah, she was great. Letitia was great, and a fantastic character. And you have a point there, Joe. I think she was easier on people that maybe found Pansy a little too much sometimes. She wasn't as overboard, I guess, as Pansy was. There was some of that aspect to the character, but not to that degree, I would say. But she was fantastic. I love the scenes too with her and Dr. Hoffman trying to resurrect Judah Zachary. There's lots of fun stuff there. And then we go into 1841 parallel time, the final storyline of the show. We're going to see a couple of characters here for Nancy Barrett. Her primary role in that storyline is Melanie Collins, who is right out of Gothic literature. The lost lineage is one of the tropes in Gothic literature. You see it going as far back as the first Gothic novel, The Castle of Otranto. She's adopted by Justin Collins. She is part of the Collins family. But we find out later she is actually legitimately a Collins by blood, as she is actually Justin's blood daughter that had after Barnabas died, he had an affair with Rosette, and she was born of that affair. So we have Melanie Collins, who spent the night in the lottery room. She is periodically because of that, she periodically becomes possessed by Amanda Collins, who is very violent in his possessions and aggressive toward the Collins family. And we meet Amanda Collins during a flashback to 1680 parallel time. And we only see Amanda in 2 episodes, I believe. One, she's alive. The other one, she's dead and kind of in this comatose state. Really creepy, covered in cobwebs, her and James Forsyth. But really great image of that. But she's married to Brutus Collins in 1680 parallel time. The much older Brutus Collins, but she is in love with James Forsyth, and when he finds out about this, he murders the two of them and places this curse in. Thus we get the cursed lottery room in that storyline. So any thoughts on these last 2 characters in the show that Nancy Barrett plays?
Well, it was interesting. Melanie was the character that was the youngest that she ever played. She was even younger than Carolyn was in the very beginning. And of course, she's 5 years older now. So it was really, really interesting the way she played that. She did a great job. And of course, then, they teamed her up with John Carlin again as Hedrick Young. And, that worked really, really well. And, but Amanda was probably her most elegant character. I mean, she really, really was. And I wish they had more of that, although I thought it was kind of bizarre that she was married to Brutus.
Yeah.
That was really bizarre.
It was also bizarre that Collinwood existed in 1680 in parallel time, when we saw in the primary timeline that it was built in 1795. But
it shows you how different the parallel universes can be.
Indeed,
so,
yes.
So, but yeah, like I said, she was probably the most elegant character that she ever played. So, even though it was only 2 episodes, again, a completely different character for her to portray, and she did a wonderful job.
Exactly. Yeah. Beth, any thoughts?
No, not really. I just like I said, toward the end, I was kind of fading out a little.
So I totally understand.
What about the costumes, though? What about the costumes?
Yes, the costumes. Yes.
Oh well, yeah, of course.
Do you have a favorite costume that Nancy Barrett wore in the show, or of her characters? Like, what's your favorite?
Well, the Pansy Faye's costume was pretty cool. I can't think of anything else that really right off the bat.
I love the boa. The boa.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was great.
Fun.
Yeah. Now, last two characters we'll talk about here were the characters she portrayed in the feature films. In House of Dark Shadows, she played Carolyn there as well, but it was a different version of Carolyn who becomes a vampire. Shocking. Carolyn dies. There's a funeral for Carolyn, which is very sad, very tragic scene with rain falling, and then we have this. As Nancy Barrett said, I think it was at one of the festivals, she said, I was a great vampire. You sure were, Nancy Barrett, if you're listening. You were a great vampire. Fantastic role, very Hammer. Again, talk about Hammer, right out of a Hammer movie. She was feral. She was great. Creepiest scene in the movie is when there's the pool scene with David. If I catch this one, Carolyn isn't dead. David, and that diaphanous town. Oh, so good. Any thoughts on House of Dark Shadows, Carolyn?
It was a shock. I mean, it really was a shock to see her that way. But they knew that they had something, after they made the movie, because she's promoted more than anybody, including Barnabas, in all of the posters and especially the foreign ones. The foreign one, Schloss der Vampire, in German. I mean, the one from Denmark is her. It's all her. There's nobody else on it.
She's at the very, look at this. I have the poster right there. She's at the very center twice. Her baring her fangs and her getting staked two times on the poster. So is Barnabas. Carolyn and Barnabas are on the House of Dark, the one I have, 2 times. And Carolyn's right in the center, too.
Yeah, it certainly was, completely different again, from what she had done. And, as many times as she was bitten in the show, about time she became a vampire.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, it was interesting to see her play the vampire finally. It also made me sad in the movie that she was staked.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. It's heartbreaking. I mean,
I know.
It's devastating. Did you see it in the theater when it came out?
I didn't. No, I saw it at home.
Yeah.
I saw it in the theater. Yeah, both the night and house.
Yeah. It's shocking, and it is very sad to see that happen to Carol. Again, it's a character that you love, that you've been following in the show for years. Everybody was slaughtered in that movie. I mean, it was just like, oh my goodness. But I always see House of Dark Shadows as just another parallel universe, just like in Parallel Time. It's there too, but it's a different Carolyn. It's not our Carolyn, I guess. I love that the core family, despite all of the trauma and supernatural horror that they've endured over the years, still survives through all of it, through the entire series. We still have Elizabeth, Roger, Carolyn, and David still there. I would have been sad to see any of them actually get killed off. And I know that in the Sam Hall article, there was that Roger may have died if the show had continued. And I hope that wouldn't have happened, because I would hate to think that. I would like to see those 4 members of the Collins family continue on, because they're the core, they're the heart of the show. And Barnabas, Barnabas is the big draw. I love Barnabas; he's my favorite character. I love Barnabas, but I love having that family there as part of what's going on too. The last role she played was after the series ended. We got Night of Dark Shadows, and her John Carlin once again paired up Claire and Alex Jenkins, the authors, a writing duo. So we get Claire Jenkins, who's a fairly normal character. For Nancy Barrett, this was kind of a straight role for her. It was not really a quirky character role. It's just she's an author, and she's seems like a nice person who's thrown into these circumstances with the supernatural happening here, her and her husband. So any thoughts on Claire Jenkins, her final role in Dark Shadows?
She was really supportive of just about everybody in the movie. Yes. I mean, she was real supportive of Tracy. She was willing to go and search, with Candlestick, candelabra and everything. And, she was the one that notified Alex that, she looked like she was drowned in the pool.
Yeah.
So, they jumped in and got her out and got her, revived and everything. But, it was Nancy being Nancy, essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
Character who was Nancy being Nancy.
Yeah, I thought it was good. I do like John Carlin and her together. I think they do make a good couple, and I enjoyed that part of it too. And so it just once again another really a good role for her, good portrayal.
She's also kind of hip. She's like she's cool. She's this hip kind of person. She's an author, and just again, it's so good seeing her with John Carlin because they're such a strong pair together. And it's sad. Again, it's like after when the movie ends, you get that news type on the screen. It's like, oh, they didn't survive either. They died too. And of course, Nancy then went on in the Dark Shadows world. She did attend festivals, not all of them, but she did come to a couple. She performed with the Collins Corps players. I know Bob Issel talks about how he was in those scenes with Nancy, and he played Barnabas and she played Carol, and I've seen some of that, and that's a lot of fun. She did singing, great singer, great performer. She's still a great performer. She did many of the finished audios as well, so it's always great to hear her in those. So any closing thoughts from either of you on any of what we talked about, or anything else that you'd like to say?
We're just so blessed that she was on the show because, although technically she wasn't a major character in the storylines, she was tremendously important in all of them. I mean, she really, really was. I wrote an article for the new Our Shadow Path is coming out. I wrote one in all the other two as well, but this one focused on the many faces of Nancy Barrett. And I actually called this article "The Many Facets of Nancy Barrett," and I talked about that. And I also mentioned the amount of episodes that she was in for each character, and of course. Ironically, she was in more as Melanie than she was as Carolyn Loomis or the Carolyn Fredericks.
Oh, wow.
Actually, in a lot as Melanie, which I didn't realize because I, like Beth, had stopped watching by 1841. I really didn't like 1841 that much at all, Parallel Time. And it wasn't until recently, less recently than the 2 years that I finally got around to watching the Approved Barnabas episodes. But I don't have the same feeling that I do now. I understand why they went in that direction. They had to. I mean, he didn't want to play Barnabas anymore. They had to do something different.
Have you listened to the Why Dark Shadows Ended episode I did with Mary O'Leary?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, there was more that Dan Curtis was, I think. Well, there was a lot going on behind the scenes. For those who have not listened, definitely check that one out. But yes, they had to do it. They had to do that storyline in that way, which is, I think my thing with that storyline, I enjoy the storyline. I love every Dark Shadow storyline, but I can always find something to love in every Dark Shadow storyline. But that I do enjoy it. But I wish they had a primary time band character go be part of that storyline, because it was always the anchor. Was that we had someone, usually Barnabas or Vicky or Julia, who was from our time band that was in that storyline. And this felt so strange because it was so disconnected from the core show. There was nobody from our time band in that storyline, so it was a little strange in that regard, I thought.
The way I reacted to it was because I was, in 1971, I was only 12 years old.
Uh-huh.
to me, it just, I missed Barnabas, and I missed Julia. Although there wasn't Julia hair, it was interesting that her hair was like Rapunzel. But that was the reason. And of course, as I become an adult, I'm the same way. That's the reason why, even though we're not talking about different versions of Dark Shadows, that's why I love the 1991 version so much, because I didn't try to compare it to the original. The original will always have the special place in my heart. But that's like saying that Shakespeare could only be performed during Shakespeare's time, and that no one else could ever perform it again.
Right.
So that's why I was able to look at 1841 a little bit different now that I'm an adult. And I appreciate it.
Beth, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I'm the same way. I rewatched the show from beginning to end a couple times. I'm kind of in the process of doing that again now. I'm on the beginning episode, so I feel the same way. As you grow older, you just see different things, and you than you did when you were a kid, especially. But I just hope that I can make it to the 60th, and I really hope Nancy does too.
Yeah, let's hope that she's able to make it. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to make it to the last one, but it would be great if she can make it to the 60th anniversary. Everyone would love to see her again. And if you happen to be listening to this, Nancy, thank you for everything you've done and for all of the years that you entertained us on Dark Shadows. We have greatly enjoyed and admired you for many years. So thank you. You are brilliant. And folks, thank you for listening to this episode. I appreciate you listening. Apologies for some of the audio issues that we've been having on this one. I'm going to try to tweak it a little bit in the editing, but I also want to thank my guests, Joe and Beth, for joining me and sharing their thoughts on the wonderful characters of Nancy Barrett. And I look forward to seeing you both, hopefully, maybe sooner than the 60th anniversary. I hope we'll get to see each other maybe out in Newport before that. So
that would be. Just thank you for all you've done to keep the Dark Shadows dream alive. I mean, you really, really deserve a lot of kudos for what you've done, along with all the other people that have done things like, Catherine, who started this off with, her first book. So we're very, very lucky. We're very, very lucky. 60 years and it's still going. And the one thing I wanted to mention about the first episodes, the pre-Barnabas episodes, I have learned to enjoy them, but I realized that, I can't be saying, I wish it stayed that way, because if it had, we wouldn't be doing this right now.
this is true. Yeah.
It would have been forgotten for the most part. So, it would become like Captain Nice, that's another way we used to run around. A couple of people will remember it, that would be it.
Yeah, exactly. It's very true, very true. But thank you for saying that. I really appreciate that, and thank you to both of you for everything you've done and for running Joe to the Many Faces of Nancy Barrett Facebook group. I hope folks will check that out and join the page, like the page, and support Joe's efforts in keeping Nancy Barrett's work alive and celebrating that. So thank you, both of you, and thank you, everyone, for listening.
And for as long as they lived, the Dark Shadows never truly vanished, for there will always be terror at Collinwood. Terror at Collinwood is a Penny Dreadful production.